Imagine living with someone who's been hiding a secret life from you, one that's been hidden in plain sight, and yet feels like a different world. You think you know them, but deep down, you're starting to wonder if you've been living in a dream. That's exactly what happened to me. I was living a life of luxury, or so I thought. We had a beautiful home, nice cars, and went on exotic vacations. But there was something off. At first, it was just little things. I'd find myself asking, is this normal? Or is this just me being silly? But pushed it aside, thinking I was overreacting. My husband would be distant, preoccupied with his phone or laptop, and I'd brush it off as being busy with work. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was living in a bubble. I had no idea what was really going on behind closed doors. We'd have conversations about our finances, but they'd always seem a bit off. He'd say we were doing great, but I'd notice that some bills were paid late, or that certain expenses seemed unexplained. I'd mention it to him, but he'd just brush it off, telling me I was being paranoid. I started to feel like I was reading between the lines, trying to decipher the code that was hidden beneath the surface. I remember one time, we were getting ready for a trip, and I noticed that he'd booked a separate room for himself at the hotel. I asked him why, and he just laughed it off, saying he needed some alone time. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than that. Was he meeting someone? Was he hiding something from me? As time went on, the feeling of unease grew. I started to feel disconnected from my husband, like we were living separate lives. I'd try to talk to him about it, but he'd just dismiss my concerns, telling me I was being too sensitive. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, never knowing what was going to set him off. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was like a nagging voice in the back of my mind, telling me that I was missing something. And then one day, everything changed. I stumbled upon an unexpected bill in our mailbox, a bank statement with a name I didn't recognize. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that this was no ordinary bill. This was the beginning of the end of my happily ever after. And just as I was about to ignore it, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The name on the statement was one that I'd heard before, but never associated with my husband. But as I looked closer, I realized that it was more than just a coincidence. It was a connection that would change everything. As I sat there, staring at the statement in my hand, I felt a mix of emotions. Fear, anger, confusion, it was all swirling together inside me. I didn't know what to do or where to turn. But I knew one thing. I had to know the truth. And so, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I picked up the phone and dialed a number that would lead me to the truth. A number that would take me down a path of discovery that I never could have imagined. And as I waited for the call to be answered, I couldn't help but wonder, what secrets had my husband been hiding from me? And what would happen when the truth finally came to light? You wake up one morning, and your world is turned upside down. The life you thought you knew, the husband you thought you understood, everything seems to be a lie. As you delve deeper, you find a trail of hidden accounts, each one revealing a shocking truth about your husband's secret life. The more you learn, the more questions you have. What was he hiding? Why did he keep it from you? And what does it mean for your marriage and your future together? You start to feel a sense of determination, a growing need to uncover the truth behind your husband's strange behavior. You begin to ask yourself questions, and the more you investigate, the more you realize that you don't know your husband as well as you thought. It's like living with a stranger, someone who's been hiding in plain sight. You start to feel a sense of unease, a growing anxiety that something is off. As you dig deeper, you come across a name that keeps popping up, a lawyer who seems to be involved in your husband's financial dealings. You start to wonder what this lawyer knows and why your husband would be hiding information from you. You decide to meet with the lawyer, hoping that they can provide some answers. The day of the meeting arrives, and you're nervous but determined. You sit down with the lawyer, and they begin to explain the situation. It turns out that your husband had hidden his wealth from you, and the name on every account was his mother's. You feel like you've been punched in the gut, your whole world turned upside down. You can't believe what you're hearing, and you're not sure how to process this information. You start to feel a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, and confusion. You're not sure how to navigate this new reality or what it means for your marriage and your future together. You start to wonder if you've been living in a dream, if your whole life has been a lie. You feel like you're walking through a nightmare and you're not sure how to wake up. But as you sit there with the lawyer, you start to feel a sense of clarity. You realize that you can't change the past, but you can take control of your future. You start to think about what you want, what you need, and what you deserve. You start to see that you have choices and that you can create a new reality for yourself. You leave the lawyer's office feeling a sense of determination. You know that you have a long road ahead of you, but you're ready to face it head-on. You're ready to take control of your life, to create a new reality that's based on truth and honesty. You're ready to move forward, to see what the future holds. As you walk out of the office, you feel a sense of hope. You know that it won't be easy, but you're willing to try. You're willing to do the work, to put in the effort, to create a life that's authentic and real. You're ready to take back control, to create a new narrative for yourself. And as you walk away from the office, you feel a sense of excitement, a sense of possibility. You don't know what the future holds, but you're ready to find out. You start to think about all the things you'll do, all the changes you'll make. You'll start to question your husband, to ask him why he kept this from you. You'll start to think about your own identity, about who you are and what you want. You'll start to explore new possibilities, new paths that you never considered before. And as you walk away from the office, you feel a sense of freedom, a sense of excitement. You know that this is just the beginning, that there's a long journey ahead of you. But you're ready to take it on, to face whatever comes next with courage and determination. You're ready to create a new reality, one that's based on truth and honesty. And as you walk away from the office, you feel a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. You don't know what the future holds, but you're ready to find out. As you reflect on this journey, you realize that it's not just about uncovering the truth. It's about taking control of your life, about creating a new reality that's based on your own values and desires. It's about being honest with yourself, about facing your fears and your doubts. And it's about being brave, about taking the leap and seeing what happens. You know that this journey won't be easy, but you're ready to take it on. You're ready to face whatever comes next with courage and determination. And as you walk away from the office, you feel a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. You don't know what the future holds, but you're ready to find out. You wake up one morning, and your world is turned upside down. The life you thought you knew, the husband you thought you understood. Everything seems to be a lie. And yet, in the midst of that chaos, you're forced to confront a harsh reality. The person you loved, the person you thought you knew, was hiding a secret life from you. But that's not the only thing that's changed. As you look back on the journey you've been on, you realize that you've been living in a state of suspended animation. You've been going through the motions, numb to the world around you, and disconnected from your own feelings. But now, with the truth out, you're faced with a choice. You can either let the pain and anger consume you, or you can use it as a catalyst for growth. You knew you had to take time for yourself, to grieve the loss of what you thought your marriage was. You needed space to process the emotions that were swirling inside you, to figure out who you were and where you belonged. And so, you took a deep breath and began the journey of self-discovery. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain felt like it was suffocating you, days when you felt like giving up. But you pushed through, knowing that you couldn't go back to the way things were before. You had to keep moving forward no matter how hard it got. And slowly but surely, you began to heal. You started to see the world in a different light. You realized that you'd been living someone else's dream, and it was time for you to find your own path. You started to reconnect with old friends, to try new things, to explore new interests. And as you did, you began to feel a sense of empowerment that you'd never felt before. You were no longer just a victim of your circumstances. You were a survivor, a warrior who had faced down the darkness and emerged stronger on the other side. And with that realization came a newfound sense of purpose. You knew that you had the power to create the life you wanted, to make choices that would shape your future. You're not the same person you were a year ago. You've grown, You've learned, and you're ready for whatever comes next. You know that there will be ups and downs, twists and turns, but you're no longer afraid. You're strong, resilient, and determined to make the most of every moment. As you look to the future, you realize that you're not just rebuilding your life, you're creating a new one. One that's authentic, honest, and true to who you are. And that's a feeling that's hard to put into words, but it's a feeling that's worth savoring. It's a feeling that says, I'm alive, I'm awake, and I'm finally living the life I was meant to live.